we're here this morning to talk to you about our coordinated efforts in the face of this very severe adverse weather that is going to be coming in the next 12 hours and going on for the next 48 to 72 hours. And it's important, it's critical for all of us that we all understand what will happen, what our roles are in this coordinated effort, and to say to the public that we not only have a plan, but we're prepared to execute that plan flawlessly to make sure that our community is safe and those that are in our community are safe and well protected. As you know, we're going to be in the grips of a significant polar vortex, even colder than the last one was, and so it's important that preparation take place. So to that end, I'm going to talk briefly about some of the things that are happening in the city operation. I'll be followed by a number of city departments, and then our partners, as Dan said, with Cuyahoga County and L&M, which is part of the NEOC network, will be coming up and really kind of talking about the things that we've planned to do that deal with the outreach that has been planned and that will continue to take place for folks that are out in the community, the homeless that are out in the community, the shelter strategy, an overview of that in terms of not only what was existing in place, but things that are being changed or modified to extend hours, open early, et cetera, and some of the policy, et cetera, as it relates to not turning folks away or not asking folks to leave once they're in the shelter. So they'll get into some of that, and then the coordinated intake process, which is all part of that, will be discussed as well. Specific to the city, we've been saying, and we'll continue to say it, that as far as our rec centers are concerned, our 22 rec centers will be open their normal hours, which is 11:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. They will serve as warming centers during those hours of operation. As far as other things that you should be aware of, and I want to emphasize this, our waste collection operation, we decided late yesterday that we're going to postpone waste collection for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. And so next week there'll be collections on the regular days for those routes that are being canceled for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. So we'd ask the residents to be patient and then understand that we don't want our waste collectors out walking in that extreme temperature. It is a hazard to their health, and actually it's a challenge to the equipment that's out there. So it's a smarter thing for us to do to cancel it, and then say that we'll be back next week to pick up whatever we can't get to at that particular point in time. As far as the roads are concerned, we expect very little precipitation, dusting maybe 1 inch or so, but we will be treating roads as required, so any hills, any bridges will be salted prior to normal policy. We'll probably do some spot sorting in places just to make sure that roads aren't slick and subject to some type of accident of some sort. So again, these are kind of some of the basic things that we'll do. I have our water department folks will come in and kind of talk to you about some tips at an appropriate point in time, because one of the big challenges is, over the next couple of days, in addition to just breaking of water mains, it really is freezing of pipes in homes. So we're going to talk to you about what we need to do in that regard. So those are my comments for right now. I'll return probably at the end after wrap up. I'm going to ask now for our aging department to come and make some comments, please. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Adam Sisler from the Cleveland Department of Aging. Later today, we will be sending out a message to 25,000 senior households using the city's Code Red messaging system. That message will include some safety tips and cold weather tips. If anyone would like to sign up for those and other important messages from the city, I recommend you go to the city's website and find the Code Red sign up. Our message will include such things as tips and recommendations for seniors during this time, such as to bundle up. We know that during this time of extreme cold, seniors are at greater risk of hypothermia, frostbite. To stay warm, we recommend seniors to set their thermostat to 68 degrees or higher to maintain a safe temperature inside the home. While being outside the home, cover your mouth, protect your lungs from extreme cold. Try to stay dry, try to stay out of the wind. Keep your areas like your face, your fingers, your toes, keep them all covered so that you're not as affected by the cold during that time. Stay warm safely. We ask people not to heat their homes with their furnace, or sorry, with their oven. If you're going to use a space heater, we recommend you to consult the safety instructions for that space heater. You can close off vents in other rooms to sort of consolidate the heat to a confined space to make things more affordable and also keep yourself safe. Check your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Ensure you have working flashlights and other supplies. Speaking of supplies, with this extreme cold, we run the risk of isolation or possible power outages. We recommend people to have at least 2 to 3 days of emergency supplies on hand, water, non-perishable foods, anything like that to help them make it through. If you don't have a working heat source or a furnace in your home, we recommend you call us, the Department of Aging, or 211 First Call for Help. We will connect you to other agencies who can help you in the meantime to possibly get that furnace working or come up with another solution. If your furnace is not working and it's going to be out for an extended period of time, we recommend that you seek shelter with a friend or family member to see this through. Lastly, if you have elderly neighbors, friends, families, please check on them during this time. With your help, you might be able to, save a life or to even just help them pass this time more easily. Check pets as well. We know a lot of our seniors have pet companions, and it's important that they stay warm and safe as well. We've compiled many of these resources and more on our website in a winter resource brochure. You can find that on the Department of Aging's website, or if you give us a call, we'll be happy to get you one as well. So with that said, turn things over to our friends at EMS.
Good morning. I'm Commander Christopher Chapin from the Division of EMS. I'm here to talk about frostbite and hypothermia, the two major concerns with this cold weather that's coming. The best way to treat these is to prevent them. Dress in loose layers. If the layers get wet, remove them. If your whole body is wet, get out of the cold if you can. Cover all exposed areas. Make sure you cover your mouth when you first walk out so you don't get that sudden rush of cold air which can trigger asthma, stuff like that. Watch out. The youngest and the oldest are the most susceptible. So if you have small children, make sure they are completely covered and look in on your elders. If you do have frostbite, the skin is frozen, that is an emergency. You should go to the hospital. If the skin is red, do not place it directly on a heat source. Passive heat is the best way to warm your skin. That is all I have to say. Look in on your elders and check in on your neighbors. Thank you. And turn it over to the Division of Fire.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Mangan, Assistant Chief of the Division of Fire. I have 4 topics that I want to discuss with you today. One is the stoves, space heaters, circuit breakers, and finally smoke detectors. First, we're asking, as been mentioned by others, do not use your stove as a main source of heat. It is produces a lot of BTUs, but it is dangerous to left unattended. On top of that, gas stoves are especially related to carbon monoxide emergencies. So leaving 4 burners on and the oven inside a stove, you're creating carbon monoxide in your living space. And we prefer that you don't do that. Use other avenues of heat. One of the avenues that people often use at this time is space heaters. They may not be familiar with them. They brought them out of the closet, the attic, someone gave them. Be sure you read the directions, are familiar with their usage. Remember that there's proper cords that have to be attached to these, and you can't overload that circuit, that cord. You don't want to leave those unattended. Never know, someone could put papers on top of it, something could blow against it. So if you're using an auxiliary space heater, please stay near it and stay attended to it. Another caution, if you're using types of space heaters, there's propane and kerosene heaters along with electric. If you use a propane heater or some kerosene, remember that's giving a lit flame in your living environment. That flame is A, more dangerous, and B, is creating some levels of carbon monoxide. So if it's prudent to have your emergency plan with carbon monoxide detectors available if you're going to use one of those. Third point I'd like to make is overloading a circuit. Overloading a circuit, when you put 7 or 10 outlet electric cords into extra extensions into a breaker, and that breaker trips, it's trying to tell you something. It's trying to tell you you've overloaded. We do not. One of our leading causes of fires this time is people just go in their basement and throw that breaker back. That's telling you something. Reduce the load. Take the load off. Run the cords to another outlet. Overloading that circuit, yes, it'll turn back on for 5 minutes or half an hour, 15 minutes, but it has the ability to start a fire within the wall. So do not overload the circuits, and when the breakers trip, decrease the load. The last point I'd like to make is about smoke detectors. It's been reiterated many times. During bitter cold, we have an increase in fire incidences, not just here, but all across this country. We ask you to pay particular attention to changing your batteries, make sure your location is correct on those smoke detectors. Again, I want to reiterate the 4 points I made. Be very cautious. Do not use your stove as a source of heat. It is both a fire hazard and a carbon monoxide hazard. Thank you. At this point, I'll turn it over to the Department of Water.
Yes, good morning. I'm Alex Margavicius, Commissioner of Water. We know we've got very bitter cold weather coming, and with that, customer plumbing is susceptible to freezing. And when plumbing freezes, first you get no water, and then eventually when it thaws, you can have burst plumbing and flooding occurring, both very unhappy scenarios for customers. We know when the temperatures themselves get very cold and the frost starts to get deep, that's when water mains break a lot. But what we found is wind chill in particular seems to be the trigger that causes freezing plumbing in homes. We've done a few things proactively. This fall, we sent flyers to all 440,000 accounts in the water system, advising them of steps they can take to protect themselves against this. Also, since the polar vortex of 2014, we've had about 5,000 customers contact us with problems with frozen plumbing. So this past Friday, we did a robocall to all 5,000 of those accounts, advising them to take proactive steps to hopefully prevent that scenario from repeating that this year for them. If customers think they are susceptible, if you have plumbing running through a cold space, for example, like a garage wall or a crawl space or an uninsulated wall, we strongly recommend today you take some preventative steps. Number one, if you've got outside spigots to your home, it's a good practice to shut those off. If you've got the opportunity, try to do some insulation if you still can before the bitterest cold gets here over the next couple days. If there are cold drafts coming in on certain parts of the wall, if you can do anything to prevent that, plug up those cracks to prevent that cold air from getting to your plumbing. Next, if you think you've got susceptibility or perhaps again have had a history, a simple pencil stream of water somewhere in your house is just enough to move water through your connection. As long as that water is moving through the connection, far less likely to freeze up. It's when it's not moving overnight that you can get the freezing to occur. If you're going to be away from your home, turn on some water and let it run. Or maybe you want to consider leaving the thermostat up to at least 55 degrees or so to make sure that it stays warm. If it does freeze, however, if you do suffer this problem, a few things to think about. One, it's a good practice to know where your shut-off valve is, okay? It's usually in the basement, right next to the water meter. The valve should be right there. You want to shut that off to prevent the flooding into your home. If your plumbing is frozen, you can try and get some heat to it. Usually a hair dryer, a hair blower is a good device to try and warm it up. Make sure, though, you're not standing in water when you're doing that, okay? If you do suffer from broken plumbing, however, you will need to contact your own licensed bonded plumber to take care of that. And with that, Matt Carroll from the County Executive's Office is here.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Matt Carroll with the County Executive's Office. Ruth Gillette from our Office of Homeless Services is also here today. Darnell at the beginning mentioned the partnership between the city and the county related to homeless services, and that's been a long-time partnership. We're here for an urgency today, but what the city and county and other partners have been doing over the last decade plus, or really more like 2 decades, is build permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless individuals. So I think over 600 units of housing have been built to minimize the issue of chronic homelessness in this community. So there's been an impact from that. But obviously today we have an urgency we wanted to cover. And I think our big point, our big picture point we wanted to make is that we intend to serve everyone, to make sure that every need is met at this time. And through that, both city and county have contracted with very qualified nonprofit providers like Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries, as well. Very pleased that the Metanoia Project has increased their services for those that need it. They're going to be open tonight through Thursday in addition to their regular weekend hours. Then on the other side, to be proactive with assessing the need in the community, we have outreach teams from Care Alliance, from Frontline, from the VA, from the Coalition for the Homeless, and from Belfair in the community, trying to engage people who are sleeping outside or in places that are not suitable for habitation, encouraging them to come to shelter, working with safety forces and others to make sure that message gets out there and that there's awareness of where services are available. So that outreach is going to be really important in these next few days. We also, those who are in shelter, they're going to be able to stay. So we want to make sure their needs are met. And again, that's our bottom line. In general, the coordinated entry for homeless services is at the Cosgrove Center at 18th and Superior. Nearby, it's from 8 to 8 every day. That's the standard process. But again, we're trying to meet the urgent need. I think we, as a group, are ready to answer questions. Ruth Gillette, again, from our office is here to answer specific questions about service. But Darnell?
All right. Thanks, Matt. As he said, we are here and we are prepared to answer questions. I would say bottom line really through all of this is as we go through the next 48 hours or so, the message should be to anyone, if you don't have to go out, please don't. And you also need to make sure that you're checking on particularly seniors or others. And I think those are the types of things that will help us all get through this process. I mentioned earlier about the cancellation of waste collection Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Yeah, that does help our employees. It takes care of our equipment, but it also keeps the residents from having to go out in the weather and the elements and try to struggle to get either the cans out front or get them picked up. So again, we're trying to be sensitive to the emergency that is going to be upon us. We talked about the rec center hours of operation. Understanding that we will all be monitoring this situation as it goes forth. The network did not organize or strengthen itself for this incident to get to this day. We need to get through the entire incident, so we'll be meeting and coordinating as the process goes on. If there are things that evolve out of that, and we've had some of those happen in the past where we've had an apartment building or senior citizen high-rise that might lose heat or something of that nature. So we are prepared for those types of scenarios as well. Again, we have a plan. We're in the process of the execution of that plan. So we'll entertain any questions that you have at this point in time.
Does anyone have an estimate of how many homeless there might be in Cuyahoga County?
I think, Ruth, can you help us with that?
Just about 1,200 per night.
She said about 1,200 per night.
Will the 4 rec centers that were open 24 hours a day in late 2017, 2018, and early 2018 be open 24 hours this time around?
No, they will not be open. They will be open during their normal business hours, and they will serve as warming centers during that point in time. Our effort has been around working with the coalition with people who are tasked with that. That's their mission. Because it takes, a couple of things we learned in our last experience was it's not just a matter of opening up a rec center. You've got to provide medical care, you got to provide shelter, you got to provide bedding, you got to provide food, security. And then we do run our normal programs during that point in time. So I have children and seniors all integrated with folks that we're trying to shelter. So it became quite a challenge to us, and so we we all felt that in the aftermath of that, when we did a debriefing, that it's best that we work with the coalition to figure out how to make sure that the capacity is here in the community to ensure that the needs are being met community-wide. Again, there are scenarios, if there is a scenario that comes up that requires us to do something, we'll work with the coalition to figure out how do we meet that challenge at an appropriate point in time.
Are there any plans to close any government offices or courts because of the cold?
I'm not sure. I know the city of Cleveland has, at this point in time, made a decision that it will remain open. The only thing that we've done at this point in time is discontinue waste collection. We have other operation folks that'll be out, that are assigned out in the field. Actually, our water department, wastewater folks, et cetera, will be out checking their jobs, securing them, making sure that they're safe. I imagine that for the most part, the only time we actually have someone out dealing with a broken water is an emergency. So we have to be there. We have to be on the job in case an emergency comes up. I know some other folks have talked about doing something with non-essential personnel not come in, but the city hasn't made that determination. I can't speak to where the county is on that at this point. So
There will be some county offices that have essential personnel only. That announcement should be made soon.
Do you know which offices?
It'll be depending on the office. It'll be for the county administration. We'll specify, and I think our other county partners will do the same.
Are there any other cities, like suburbs outside of Cleveland, that are also stopping their trash? Do you know?
I'm aware that Lakewood postponed theirs for the remainder of the week, and I believe there are a couple of others that have considered doing that as well.
Summit County is offering free metro rides on their buses. Is RTA planning anything like that?
I have not heard that at this point in time. I know they did that last time that we had the polar vortex, but we have not heard that from them as part of this initiative.
In terms of homeless services, for the intake, do people have to go through coordinated intake in order to go to the shelters, or will everyone be accepted?
Hi, I'm Ruth Gillette with the Office of Homeless Services. So generally speaking, people should continue to go to coordinated intake, which is at 1736 Superior Avenue. They're open from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. If someone needs shelter after 8 p.m., if it's a single adult, they can go directly to 2100 Lakeside, if it's a male, and to the Norma Hare Women's Shelter, which is at 2227 Payne Avenue. For families who are seeking shelter after 8 p.m., they should call 211, and 211 will patch them to a live on-call staff person who will direct them to shelter if needed.
Will people be allowed to bring their pets to shelters?
Currently, the women's shelter and the men's shelter here accept people who have service animals. So
Not household pets.
some household pets have also, I think, been accommodated in general. If it's a service animal, yeah.
We heard quite a bit about plumbing issues and water issues. Can anyone speak a little bit more about how the power grid or electrical issues could arise from the cold? I don't know if there's anyone here that can speak to that.
As I recall, I think the last time we went through this exercise, it was actually precipitated by a large outage on the west side. I think that was like December 26th and thereabouts. And it was, fortunately, it was a short duration. We were able to kind of get the system back up and operational, but we were already mobilizing for shelters, et cetera, at that point in time when that occurred. And so, again, we can't predict what will happen with the grid. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get through this without any issue or concern, but work crews are standing by and ready to do whatever they need to do. As I said, we are part of a coalition, and so if there were a large area impacted, we would try to figure out logistically where our resources that could or should be or could be transitioned into accommodate a temporary shelter for warming or sheltering. We have a number of sites that we're in constant communication with. Now we have people actually calling and offering their resources as a shelter. So we're working through all those scenarios in the event that we need to do something. But there are, as an example, if something happened on the west side and in the Lorraine or Detroit area, we certainly would consider opening up zone as a place to shelter folk. So we do that. We've already talked to, as an example, Red Cross and our Emergency Operations Center in the event that we have to, raise up a location. And so they will be standing by in the event that we need to do that.
Is there a, emergency operations center where all of you will be staffed or emergency personnel will be monitoring the situation at various hours of the day?
Not at this point in time. We do have, we have our own network, and we have actually, I'm sure we use the same strategy. We'll have appropriate times that we would dial in and brief every 12 hours or so as to what's happening in the network, what are the challenges, if any, and whether or not there are resource requirements. And so we have historically operated that way. If something significant happened, we would operationalize the EOS, the Emergency Operations Center, for that purpose. But at this point in time, there's no intent to do that.
How would you get that information out? Is there like a website that people can?
In terms of,
you said that you'd give updates every once in a while. Is there
when I say updates, I'm talking about internally. In our network, we would do that. We will also work with our press communications offices. If there is something that needs to be updated, I'm sure we'll be doing that. We do that when we're having our snow responses. And so I think if there's anything that's noteworthy that needs to get out and get reported or updated, we'll make sure that that gets done. Same thing. We do have those internal meetings. Just to brief, we'll have communications, our public safety people, our utilities, public works, our outside partners, the county, we'd all participate in a call just to understand whether or not logistically there are any challenges that need to be addressed. So
there's no Twitter handle?
No, we would send out something or an update appropriate based on the outcomes of those meetings. So if there are things that come out of those meetings that need to be communicated, pushed out, then we give that to our communications office. They take care of getting that out in a timely manner.
We have the City of Cleveland website, but the primary means would be the blog, our Twitter, and Facebook. Right now, we're broadcasting live through Facebook. We use that as a primary means, as well as Twitter and our blog.
And the county also has an emergency management office, works with our suburbs and the city of Cleveland as well. We have a Ready Notify system you can sign up for and get alerts like this, but we put them out through the county's communication system too.
What is the level of concern of further large-scale water main breaks? And are there particular areas in the city where the infrastructure is older than other parts that are more susceptible to large-scale breaks?
I don't think the answer to that would be yes. I think it's a function of what's happening, and most of these breaks are by virtue of the whole issue of freeze and thaw. And so as the ground freezes, the ground move shifts, it creates pressure on pipes break. So it's not an age issue. And as a matter of fact, we had one a couple of days ago on Ingle Road, and we don't know, we can't explain what happened to it. It's concrete pipe. We'll send it out for forensics to kind of figure out after the fact if there's something that pointed to why this particular pipe broke, et cetera. But in general, anytime there's a large freeze, or conversely, when it gets warmer again, it's supposed to be in the 40s by the weekend, it's going to play havoc with what's happening. Water lines are, by our requirement, a minimum of 4 foot deep, so that we try to keep them below the freeze line, but it's still the ground is moving. So no, there's no predictor for that. In general, what we do is we make sure that all of our internal crews are ready and ready to be mobilized And then we have what we call CA contract assistance. So we have a number of contractors that are on call that will support or enhance the number of crews that we have readily available for that. Again, the priority for us is once we get into the season is responding to any breaks that we get. So if we're working on other routine things, we're going to pull a crew off of that to get to wherever that emergency is, so that we don't have people that are in we don't have a hazardous condition with a road, et cetera, but we don't want people out of water as well. So I think the system is sophisticated enough, our water system is sophisticated enough that we're able to do things in a way that minimizes the impact to the public. As an example, you ready to say Ingle Road was a 36-inch distribution main, large line that affected 4 communities. By the time we got it shut, because of our ability to reroute water, we were able to get everybody back in water in a really short period of time. And as I understand, I know we just did testing with Ohio EPA for that. And they've given us the all clear to lift the boiler advisory. So these are things that we do that are, just germane to our general course of business. So we have a plan for any of these scenarios. We know that we have this cold weather here, and we plan accordingly.
How does the cold affect the power transmission equipment? Why are there issues with power outages in the cold like this?
And any of a number of reasons. First of all, when you get cold, particularly if you got snow or ice on the line, you've got an issue. Wind and wind chill makes it a little bit more brittle. You have trees. Our biggest nemesis really are trees and branches. So they get weight, they freeze, they break off, they sever a line. And then there's load on the system. There's just the additional load on the system from furnaces running at higher, more RPMs, et cetera. Any of a number of things that contribute to that. And then the whole system is age. When we start talking about the age of infrastructure, the electric grid obviously could use a large infusion of capital improvements. So it is susceptible, particularly during cold or extreme heat because of load and then external factors for outages.
Will all the public buildings be open tomorrow? You mentioned you might have some offices in the county side that are on essential worker zones, but will like the administration building, City Hall, the human services buildings, places like that all be open?
Yeah, City Hall will be open.
And that announcement will go out shortly. There'll be a reduced staff, but some of the buildings will be open. But you'll see the announcement shortly, I believe.
Could I offer a clarification on the question about how many homeless are there? So every year the community does a point-in-time count in January. So one night in January, which happened to be last Monday, every homeless person that's in shelter and unsheltered is counted. And my office compiles those counts, and every community throughout the country does. And this is a way to help people understand what the level of homelessness is throughout our communities, and also feedback into how well our programming is working to reduce the number of people that are in shelter. So in our community, that's where I can come up with that number. About 70% of that number would be single adults. And so the remaining would be people who are in families. So on any given night, that would be the number of people that have shelter in our community. They're not on the street. Those are sheltered people. We have very few people that are unsheltered in our community at the point-in-time count. And in a situation like this, one of the good things is that because we have outreach year-round, those unsheltered people, the outreach teams know where they are, and so they can go to them and ask, really try to engage them to come in during this weather. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that in case people were under the impression that there were 1,200 homeless, like unsheltered people. That's not the case in our community.
All right, all right, thank you.